Welcome to day 4, where you will have noticed that, I've made a good amount of progress within the Minecraft world that I had made just a few episodes ago. Um, so of course our little shack here stayed just about the same design-wise, although I have added a few nifty things such as this stone cutter, which has done a pretty good job of cutting up the different cobblestones, sort of polishing it up, turning it into bricks even. This I have not able to use too much, although on the repair side it does a pretty good job. And you can sort of combine lots of items in need of repair in exchange for, slightly improved ones. I have not been able to mess around with the enchantment feature just yet. As far as the furnaces go, I added about 3 more just so I realized that one was not enough. Especially due to the fact that I realized that I had to create a separate shack just to keep around additional inventory. As you can see, these chests are now filling up mainly with the cobblestone, just from, the hours that I have put into mining alone. And of course, we have some additional items here and there here in the second chest. This is sort of what I call the chest of rarity, where you see I finally have managed to find a few diamonds in the game. And of course, gold ingots that I have crafted just from finding gold ores as well. And we'll go over that in this episode, how I managed to do that. And of course, emeralds is something that I obtained just from trading with one of the villagers that keeps wandering around, right, with the llamas. I think we ran into him in the last episode. Redstone dust. Supposedly, I haven't been able to use yet, but, has the ability to transform a lot of objects for, automation. You can sort of automate a lot of the repetitive tasks in the game. And of course, for switches and things of that sort. So a lot of great progress here, as you can see. And of course, I also have this diamond sword, which I crafted together as well recently with some of the diamond that I acquired from mining, which has a pretty good attack damage comparatively. And of course, as you might imagine, the durability itself is probably one of the biggest factors, of why diamonds are a plus in the game. And what else? A lot of great things here. These 2 pieces I managed to pick up in a chest that I had found just nearby on, that other village, which was completely unoccupied. And coming right outside the house, right? Nice little sign here. This has stayed just about the same. No upgrades there. As you can see, I have managed to put together different pieces of farm infrastructure. So here, there's a lot of breeding for, cows. Here we have some sheep. And of course, each of these, infrastructures do have irrigation capabilities. You water, they have plenty of water. I have wheat growing in each of these structures as well. This one is unoccupied at the moment until I figure out what else to breed next. And of course, here we have a bunch of these chickens. Quite a bit. So again, lots of great progress from last time. The other thing too is on the mining side. And of course, by the way, I did manage to put together this compass as well. Just from crafting, I believe, iron ingots, and there's another piece that I can't think of right now. But it's basically readily available, whatever that was. And of course, this always points to the spawn location on the map. So not necessarily the last bed that you were in. So it can't be our shack, but at least it's here in this area where we usually spawn. Hey, welcome to the stream. And so, going back to the mining location. A good bit, right, from the last episode. So what I ended up doing, I sort of gave up here just because, we sort of managed to scratch the surface, but I did not, find any rare items or minerals. But I did notice that once this path here started to sort of open up, I got into this mining method. I'm not sure what they call it, but instead of mining straight down, which is obviously dangerous because you could wind up just on top of some lava, or worse, you could probably just, again, probably some type of different death. Like you'll just fall to, the depths of nothingness potentially. And so with that being said, I have mined it sort of in a diagonal fashion, no more than 1 to 2 pieces per block. It is a long way down, as you can see. But this is the only way. I mean, we got all the way down to the lava here. And the other thing too is, once you hit these blocks in survival mode, you cannot mine anymore. Like if I were to continue mining, it's there's nothing there. And so this area right here is sort of our max depth, sort of a search for the different minerals. So what I managed to do was, instead of focusing on this area, we did make another sort of stone stairway here. And of course, this is the next mining joint, as you can see. And although I'm sure a lot of people have different ways of doing the mining, I know a lot of people do it diagonally, a lot of people do it, vertically down, whatever. What I've been focusing on is just horizontal. Sort of does help. And this was one of the ways that I had mined up a good bit of iron ore. Whereas before I was having trouble, finding even one. And here you go. Here's more of that. I forget what this is called. But the point is, number one, your objective is to just mine, close to the, I suppose, Earth's core as much as possible, to the point where you would start to see a lot of those bedrock is what they call these, the ones, super dark ones down here. And once you get to the bedrock, that's basically your threshold of your depth search downwards. And then from there, I would probably recommend just going horizontal. See, so you can see a lot of these start opening up the more you go down. And this is one of those things where you probably can't do this initially when you start out. And one other thing I've noticed, by the way, is that a lot of these cannot be mined without the relevant type of pickaxe. I think the blue ones are probably okay if you use a regular stone pickaxe, but for the gold ones, and I believe the iron ones, or not iron, I'm sorry, the diamond ones, for those you have to use something like an iron pickaxe or above. Otherwise, what's going to happen is those blocks are just wasted, and you will have accumulated absolutely nothing. from that mining. So definitely have to make the best of it. I think it's all about having the right items on hand. So again, lots of progress since the first couple of episodes, where really initially it was just about me being able to survive in this game. And now it's really about trying to get as many different minerals as possible, crafting together new items. And of course, in my case, it's running out of space back at the shelter because I have way too many of these cobblestone. And of course, a lot of times these things will break down over time, which is completely fine because cobblestone itself will be used to craft together more of those. And honestly, I've learned that cobblestone is probably like one of the most common, if not the most common, type of mineral out there in this game. It's always readily available. Hence, the reason why I have a lot of those chests filled up back at the shelter. At some point, you're bound to reach some dull moments in the mining process itself. But right now, after finding that blue stuff, what is it called? I keep saying blue stuff. Lapis lazuli. So outside of that, that's when you can either sort of change up your location. You can even try going diagonally or mining in a different manner. And of course, I've gotten used to placing a lot of these torches once every now and then just to keep some light around, just because the darker it gets within every few blocks, I guess the more chances for enemies to spawn in that area. Thankfully here we don't see that many because of the fact that there's a very limited space to move around when you're coming down. I figured if you see an enemy straight down this line, then there's someone there. Otherwise, there's no places to hide. And that's one of the advantages of this method of mining. Where I think a lot of people that start out, you'll just start mining from the top and go down horizontally. But of course, that's going to waste a lot of your time. And you're likely to find more cobblestone. A lot of these, I think they're called diorites. A lot more of those generally. And since these are not, that further down, you probably won't get as much, unless maybe you'll probably find a lot of these granite pieces or maybe even some iron here and there. And as you can see, it's already nighttime. Which, by the way, is also interesting because compared to before, like I said earlier, I've been spending less time, going back to the shelter and worrying about enemies as opposed to just going out there and kind of defeating a lot of those one by one. And another thing you may have noticed from the last couple, few episodes is I have been sort of pillaging the land around the farm and the shelter as well. Because a lot of times I personally don't like having these, ups and downs here. different elevations. There's no sense in doing that, especially if you're planning like a whole village or a city. Although that's more of a subjective thing more than anything. As far as enemies goes, these guys are never a problem. The zombies that walk around. The skeleton ones are not a problem either. I know right now I don't have any arrows on hand, so I can't really use the bows. But that's typically what I prefer for these guys. Just, long range. Of course, as you can see, one of my swords broke down. So we are going to rely on the diamond one for the time being. And of course, as part of my daily workflow, I would typically deposit a lot of these excess stones here to slightly keep it organized. As you can see, most of these are just cobblestones because, again, like I said earlier, they're the most common. And for these bone pieces, I typically transform these into bone meal because that really helps with farming. It basically expedites the whole harvesting process. Actually, while we're at it, let's go ahead and maybe build another sword just because I don't want to have to go back to the diamond one every time. And that's just from a conservative standpoint. So here is what I was talking about earlier. So this one's almost done, right? The bow, from a durability standpoint. So if you have another one, for example, I mean, both of these are completely fine. They're pretty much unused. But here we go, repair and disenchant. So typically the idea is to keep, the healthier variant of the item on top and this one on bottom. So what happens is the one on the bottom gets replaced and both of them are sort of consolidated into a better bow. And as you can see, my hunger level is now probably, about 50%. So now I'm relying less on the animals, going towards somewhat of a vegetarian mindset here. And again, that's not really necessary. I think it's just easier to rely on the wheat that we harvest from the farm because bread itself sort of suffices to fill your hunger level. And again, wheat is always easily accessible, I think. As you can see, we have a good bit of these around now. Coast is clear as it's now early morning, and so one of the first things we can do is harvest some of the wheat that we've grown from the last few days. As you can see, it's very easy to attain. And the farm life in the game is not too difficult to understand. I mean, provided you have enough of these seeds, and of course you do need to have this this land sort of pillaged, maybe in the right way. In which case you would use a garden hoe to make it, sort of in this shape, and then you can start placing these seeds. I mean, provided, I think the rule in this game is that these blocks just need to be at least 1 to 2 places away from the source of water, right? So I know I have it in the immediate location of one spot, but if I had it for this row as well, that would work as well, right? But it would probably take longer than this one to be ready for harvesting. And I know I don't have bone meal on hand, but if you do have a lot of those, you can also expedite the farming process as well. In fact, I think I'll use that since I do have a good bit. And of course, this guy somehow managed to climb my, storage space here, even though there is absolutely no ladders. So that's pretty interesting. Unless you just happen to spawn there. Which, by the way, this is my new shed just for storage that I had made recently, since I will run out of room in the other house. So this will serve as a storage compartment, and if I need any more room, then I would basically keep building on top, sort of like a factory, if you will. So back to what I was saying earlier, if I go back here, get some of the bone meal on hand. But typically you can really expedite the process by using the bone meal as, I guess it acts sort of like a compost, as well as a catalyst for growing a lot of these crops. And it was interesting rounding up a lot of these animals within these confined spaces, because you have to use a specific type of crop or food in luring them in before you close the gates. As you can see, it starts to rain. So we'll do the same here. And you may have noticed this one looks slightly different from the others, and that's because it is actually potatoes. So it did grow 2. So we're going to plant a few more of those. Meanwhile, the others can be seeds, just so we're not wasting time and space. And like I said earlier, for each one of these, we'll utilize the bone meal to expedite the process. There we go. And last but not least, the chickens. A lot of times you'll notice that they do hatch a lot of eggs when you're away somewhere. And the only use I've found for those, which is relevant, is a lot of times if you throw some on the ground, there's a possibility of it hatching. Oops. Let's see if I can manage to get at least one out. I don't think so. So it's sort of rare, in essence. And this one seems to be standing very near to us. And you'll notice that as soon as I select the seed item in my inventory, these guys would just come over and flock towards me because this is their luring point. So it acts as a charm for them to follow you. Oops, and I accidentally just gave it one. And you do have to be careful not to overfeed these guys because each time you do feed more than one of them, they will try to breed. And of course, you know, they start to multiply. Looks like that's what's gonna happen right now. So eventually I will have to expand these quarters just a little bit so, you know, these mishaps don't happen as often. And of course, you always have to make sure you close the fence gate. Otherwise, you risk losing out a lot of these animals. There you go. So that one instantly hatched. And now it is starting to get a little late and near nighttime. These guys you do have to be careful with because they do explode if you are too near them for a long period of time, as you can see here. And of course, the problem with that is they will absolutely alter the landscape around them. That was another one that exploded just now. So you have to be very careful at night when you're walking around in a lot of these dark sections. These guys are also dangerous. I believe they're called Endermen. they can apparently access different realms. Like they're not only 3D, but they have some 4D capabilities, and they can warp, from time to time. They also have a lot of texture grabbing capabilities. So a lot of times they'll be grabbing a piece of dirt, walking around, doing something with it. So the good thing is they are neutral in nature, which means they will not attack unless you decide to go near them and you're up to no good potentially. In the meantime, you'll have noticed that the villagers have done a pretty good job so far. Adding more and more houses to their community. I mean, I have not been, in a position where I need to steal any of their resources. So I'm just seeing what exactly they can create without my intervention. Looks like there was another one of those exploding guys. I guess they're called creepers. And these spiders, believe it or not, they can be neutral, I believe, if they're found in caves. But the ones that are out in the open will always go after you regardless, especially if they are aware that you're in the area. These guys are always hostile regardless. And like I said earlier, I would prefer using bows and arrows against them, since they themselves are long range. The good thing about killing off these spiders is you can grab a lot of their silk, which a lot of times you can trade for emeralds with some of the villagers that wander around. So a lot of my pastime at night is basically just to sort of gain experience by killing off a lot of these enemies. Otherwise, you can, do what you do best and just immediately go to sleep. A good bit of them here. So you have to be careful not to overdo it. And again, I honestly have no clue how this llama got up there. So kind of like that. Long range wise. I think he dies in 3 hits if you... Oops. There you go. And another thing you may have noticed from the last episode is I seem to have jumped quite a few levels. I think I was at level 6 during day 3. And of course, now we are at 33. And of course, your levels can increase not only from defeating enemies, but just from mining a lot of the different minerals. So once we wake up, we'll sort of go back to the village that's nearby and see what's going on, inside their society. A lot of times they do have some neat items, which, by the way, which reminds me, probably a good idea to have a lot of these on hand because they do become trading commodities in game. Maybe have an emerald with us or two. The only thing I would be interested in, as far as trading emeralds for, is maybe one of the pumpkins. As I mentioned before, that's actually one of the key ingredients that's utilized when you're crafting an iron golem together. And in fact, I think they have a couple by now in the nearby village. So here's one right here. Again, this is a very neutral mob. He will protect the village that he's, encompassing. Here's a cat. So let's see what this guy has. And a lot of the villagers will have, different items each. It's not, thankfully it's a little diverse. And here, like I said earlier, one of the reasons why I brought these silk items is so you can trade 20 of these for an emerald. And he seems to want to give me what is this? Can't really see what that is, but that's definitely something new. And that right there we'll go over right after walking through the village, because that's also something I had recently found. This one seems to be clay. And of course, if you're a level 1 as far as trading goes, you can't really sell stuff that's 2 and above. So that's also something that's worth, putting your time in. Typically, I don't enter any of these houses unless I'm trying to trade with these people. Because like I said earlier, I really have no need of becoming hostile with these people. This is also very common. So a lot of those rotten flesh that you will accumulate just from defeating a lot of the zombies that you see walking around, they will trade you some emeralds for those. And of course, they seem to have a decent amount of farming going on as well. These look like potatoes, and I guess not sure what this stuff is. But this is what I hope to make in the near future. One of these guys. The only problem that could result with these is that if you don't have an actual village when they are spawned, then they'll basically run to the nearest one. Yikes. So this was one of the areas that I had found just recently. Um, Initially, I didn't mess around with any of these blocks at all, thinking that they actually belonged to the village. But of course, back then I thought that they were nothing more than hostile mobs, right? But of course, now that we've learned that they're more, not necessarily friendly, but they are neutral, um, I decided to, go in here. There was actually a chest, yep, where I had found a bunch of, gold ingots, some gold armor, and some other cool stuff. This stuff, I believe, is called, I think, obsidian, and it is one of the more rare pieces that you'll find in the game, as far as mining goes. And this, I believe, can only be mined if you are using. No, this is actually netherite, and it can only be mined if you are using at least a diamond pickaxe and above. This right here can just be, I assume, gotten from an iron pickaxe, which is what, gold? Block of gold. Oops. And these glowing pieces, I really haven't found a use for them. Let's see. Magma block. A lot of cool and rare stuff here. And of course, I haven't been able to mine any one of these guys either. That is a nether rack. And I have no idea what these things are that they've constructed here. Obviously, we know what they do, right? Just to ward off enemies at night and create that light source when you need it. But outside of that, I'm not sure. I think we're just about done here as far as trading. I don't see anything else that's worth our time. So we'll watch out for more deals on pumpkins. And hopefully by the time I can create one of my iron golems, hopefully I will already have created, a couple more of the buildings, or at least shelters, to where it constitutes an actual village. So the iron golem does not really, trying to run away. A lot of times I have a habit of walking around the entire shelter space before I do anything on the crafting table or the chest, because many times you'll see that a lot of those skeleton guys will help themselves around the house if they did happen to break in, and of course they can kind of kill you as well, so you have to be very careful. I guess this thing can be converted to ingots, right? I assume 9 of them, so that's very good. Weighted pressure plate. Not sure what the use is behind that. So good amount of gold that we've accumulated here. And I think as time goes on, I will probably want to continue organizing some of these chests, because several times you will lose track of what you have. I just realized if I were to go back to mining, underground, I would need at least a few more pickaxes on hand. You always have to look around for enemies, as soon as you enter. I think that right now the coast is clear. So we'll go back down, we'll continue the excavation from mining as low as possible, work our way up. So let's see if we can find anything worthy of our time this time around. There you go. There's some iron ore. And then some underground. And of course, I seem to have missed an extra shovel, because a lot of times that helps you cut down the dirt a lot faster. For now, we'll continue using this pickaxe to do the job. And of course, you'd be surprised the number of cobblestone you would start to accumulate during each of these runs. In my case, it's at least there's another source of redstone. So in my case, it's at least 4 packs of 64 cobblestone sets minimum. So we use iron to get this stuff. Oh, and there's some more where that came from. Looks like. So at some point, I'm sure the redstone debris that surfaces will become a lot more common. And let's get this thing before we forget. But before we do something like that, usually I don't recommend digging straight down. So quite a bit of iron ore here. Very valuable. And of course, these things are pretty neat too, because they do contain coal and a lot of times experience points. This one's pretty deep. And it has a good bit. It's almost as if we've hit a mini coal mine. And like I said earlier, the deeper you go, the darker it gets, so you do want to make sure there's enough light in these corners. Here's some more iron ore. I think we're just about done here for this set of excavations. So a good bit of iron ore there. Not too bad. So for now, let's make our way back home. And the great thing about these torches is they're pretty much in essence infinite. They don't seem to run out over time. This is slightly tedious, right? But eventually, I think once I have enough space, you know, near the bottom, I imagine I would probably create a bunch of ladders, combine them, you know, sort of join them together, and hopefully that'll help going up and down. And it should be time to eat. As you can see, we only have 4 of the meats filled out. And again, bread is the easiest source of food that you can generate. Without killing, of course. And with every ounce of iron ore that I do attain, I will immediately just go to smelting, you know, converting it to iron ingots, and of course placing it in our inventory. Same idea with a lot of the gold that we've accumulated over time. So And of course, that brings us to the end of today's episode. So again, a lot of progress here. From a mining perspective, from an inventory perspective, and of course, from an experience one as well. And honestly, I feel like I'm still learning a lot with this game. I haven't been able to figure out, how to effectively use this redstone dust. But I do know just from experimenting, um, with having it in inventory or on hand on the crafting table, you can do some really neat stuff there. As far as turning switches on, turning things off, converting things, routing things here and there. So it's basically a source of power. So obviously more to come on that soon. And another thing too, you may have noticed in, I think, a couple of episodes ago is when I was wondering, well, how do I add glass and windows to the house? Well, it's not that difficult. I think I managed to do it, and it's probably the only way you can is you get a bunch of sandstone, and you smelt it using, I believe, coal, and so with that basically yields a bunch of raw glass cubes that you can use. And of course, you do have to use a crafting table to convert that glass to window panes. If you want to use it with your house. A lot of great stuff, and I guess in the next episode we'll kind of explore a lot of the, if I can, we'll get to the redstone stuff, and if not, hopefully we can mine up some more minerals and add some upgrades to maybe the house or some of our weapons or inventory. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.